When a 17-year-old is breaking records set by legends like Pelé and Ronaldo, we need to ask a serious question. Are we witnessing a miracle of talent or setting up a child for catastrophic burnout? Like a comet blazing across the soccer firmament, Lamine Yamal has become the youngest Euro scorer in history and recorded the most assists in a tournament since 1980. The psychological pressure placed on teenage athletes can have devastating consequences that extend far beyond the pitch. Clubs, sponsors and fans rarely confront this troubling reality. This documentary exposes what happens when we transform children into global superstars overnight. The unprecedented rise, La Masia to world stage. What truly sets Lamine Yamal apart from other football prodigies is the remarkable speed of his development. La Masia, Barcelona's famed youth academy, shapes complete footballers through a holistic methodology that balances technical skills with tactical understanding, psychological development and teamwork. This comprehensive foundation laid early in his formative years now fuels both his extraordinary talents and creates unique developmental challenges. When Yamal joined La Masia at just 7 years old, few could have predicted how rapidly he would ascend through the ranks. While most elite talents spend years progressing through each age group, Yamal's trajectory defied conventional patterns. By 15, he was already competing in Barcelona's under-19 team, a level most players don't reach until they're actually 18 or 19 years old. This accelerated pathway raises important questions. The traditional timeline for integrating young talents into first-team football typically begins around age 18, with full establishment coming between 19 and 21. This gradual progression exists for good reason. It allows players to develop physically, technically and psychologically at a sustainable pace. Yamal's rapid ascent compressed years of development into months. Barcelona's financial difficulties during this period likely influenced his promotion, with the club facing significant debt. Yamal represented both sporting potential and financial practicality as a homegrown talent. Match footage reveals abilities beyond his years. During critical moments against elite defenders, Yamal consistently finds space where others see none. His decision-making in the final third, awareness when navigating tight defences, and composure under pressure are qualities rarely seen in players with twice his experience. He identifies and exploits defensive weaknesses with cognitive processing typical of veterans. This technical readiness doesn't eliminate physical concerns. Research on adolescent male development highlights significant changes occurring between 14 and 18 years. Precisely Yamal's current stage, his developing body competes against fully formed adults who possess more mature muscular systems, bone density and cardiovascular capacity, creating injury vulnerabilities rarely addressed in discussions about his playing time. Euro 2024 showcased both his promise and concerning limitations. While his performance helped guide Spain to victory, observers noticed moments where physical constraints became apparent, stronger defenders outmuscled him, and fatigue affected his late-match decision-making. The fundamental tension surrounding Yamal centres on a critical question. Are we witnessing the natural emergence of a once-in-a-generation talent, or is Barcelona gambling with a child's development? The answer likely contains elements of both realities. La Masia's distinctive approach has equipped Yamal with tactical understanding and technical abilities most developing players lack. Yet this advanced football education can't fully compensate for the biological realities of adolescent development or the physical challenges of fame at 17. The psychological burden when children become commodities. Behind every highlight reel and record-breaking statistic lies an uncomfortable truth about Yamal's journey. While we marvel at his technical brilliance on the pitch, few consider what happens inside the mind of a teenager whose life has been transformed from gifted student to global commodity virtually overnight. Adolescence is fundamentally a time of identity formation. Young people naturally experiment with different versions of themselves, test boundaries, and gradually develop their sense of self. For Lamine Yamal, this critical development process unfolds under the unforgiving spotlight of international attention, rather than in normal teenage environments. Imagine a typical 17-year-old worrying about a comment on their social media post or what friends think of their weekend plans. During this critical period, teenagers are particularly sensitive to external validation and peer influence. Note, developmental psychologists. For Yamal, this translates to millions analysing his every touch of the ball, his decision-making, and even his body language during matches. His formative experiences centre around extraordinary expectations that most adults would struggle to manage. The commercialisation of Yamal has already begun. Major brand sponsorships have transformed him into a valuable business asset before he's legally able to sign his own contracts in many contexts. These commercial obligations alter his relationship with football itself. What began as play transforms into product, with performance tied to financial implications far beyond what a developing mind should process. Football history offers clear warnings through cautionary tales like Bojan Krkić, another La Masia graduate once hailed as the next Messi, whose promising career derailed under anxiety and crushing expectations. Similarly, Martin Odegaard, who debuted for Norway at just 15, disappeared from the spotlight for years, struggling under the weight of premature fans. These cases represent profound psychological challenges emerging from early exposure to elite-level pressure. While Barcelona has implemented psychological support systems, many experts question whether these interventions adequately address the unique pressures facing a 17-year-old thrust into global fame. Social media compounds these challenges, creating immediate, often cruel commentary accessible with a single swipe, a psychological burden particularly disruptive for a developing teenage brain still learning emotional regulation. Even our language reveals our collective failure to recognise his youth. Terms like Wonder Boy place impossible expectations on his shoulders while erasing his right to normal development. These labels aren't merely descriptive, they form the narration within which Yamal must construct his identity, narrowing the space for normal growth and exploration. Sports psychologists warn that the most insidious effects often emerge years later, when the psychological bill for premature exposure comes due. The economic reality, football's youth obsession. As these young talents struggle with the psychological burden, a parallel economic reality drives their accelerated development. What many fans don't realise is that Barcelona's financial crisis has transformed Yamal from merely a footballing prodigy into a potential financial lifeline for one of the world's most biggest clubs. Look beyond the spectacular performances and highlight reels, and you'll find a cold financial calculation reshaping how football views its youngest talents. Over the last decade, top European leagues have experienced a striking trend. The average age of professional debuts has steadily declined. This economic reality, rather than purely sporting reasons, propels talented youngsters into the spotlight. The modern transfer market has fundamentally altered youth development valuation. Football executives view promising teenagers as financial assets to be developed in-house and potentially sold for enormous profits, creating powerful incentives to accelerate development timelines. Like stocks in a high-stakes marketplace, clubs invest early to maximize potential returns. This system becomes particularly lucrative through training compensation and solidatory payments. When players transfer between clubs, original teams receive compensation based on factors like age and development time. The financial pipeline rewards early talent identification. The younger a player debuts, the longer they generate value. Barcelona exemplifies this approach perfectly. Drowning in debt, the club has pivoted towards a youth-first strategy as economic survival. By promoting academy products like Yamal, they simultaneously reduce expensive transfer needs while cultivating assets that could eventually balance their books. The teenager represents the intersection of sporting potential and financial salvation. A homegrown superstar who could either lead the team for a decade or be sold for a record fee. The financial calculation extends beyond transfers. Young players generate substantial secondary revenue through merchandising, social media engagement, and commercial partnerships. Their marketability often outpaces veterans a decade older, as younger fans identify with teenage stars while brands eagerly attach themselves to talents who could dominate for the next 15 years. This creates a troubling incentive structure where long-term development might be sacrificed for short-term gain. Players like Jadon Sancho and Pedri have been managed as financial assets first, with clubs strategically positioning these talents to maximize market value, sometimes at the expense of physical and psychological well-being. The complex web of stakeholders complicates matters further. Agents see career-defining commissions, families anticipate life-changing wealth, and clubs project massive investment returns. In this environment, who truly advocates for the teenager's best interests? The conflict between development needs and financial incentives creates a scenario where economic considerations often prevail. The machinery of modern football has created a system that systematically accelerates youth development, frequently disregarding the human cost. Financial incentives to monetize talent earlier override considerations about whether this timeline truly serves the player's development. So we've reached the heart of what makes Lamine Yamal's situation truly concerning. Behind the goals, assists, and highlight reels lies an uncomfortable truth. We're collectively gambling with a child's future for our entertainment and profit. The sustainable approach experts advocate for would prioritize Yamal's long-term well-being instead of immediate results. This means implementing age-appropriate training loads, mandating rest periods, and creating psychological safe spaces where failure becomes development. Imagine a decade from now. Will we celebrate Yamal's legendary career or mourn how the industry consumed another brilliant talent? The true tragedy isn't football's lost potential, but a young person's sacrificed well-being. What future do we want for the children we claim to admire?